In Chroma Arcana, you are a mage, but you're also battling other mages, throwing spells at them, using items to improve yourself, and become better in casting your spells so you can defeat your opponent. Now, what I have here in front of me is just a promo copy, so this is not the finished game yet, meaning that some things might change until the finished game comes out. But what I will show you here is how to play the game. I will show you how to set it up and what you can do during your turn, plus what all of the different cards actually means. So let's take a look at this. First thing we need to do is to choose our egos. Here I will show you the beginner game. In a beginner game, it's recommended that you take Nuri as the attacker and Saria as the defender. Once we have taken our egos, it's also time for us to take our roots. In this case, in a beginner game, Saria will take Nature's Fury and Nuri will take From the Ashes. The next step would be to assemble your deck. Now, in a beginner game, it says in the rulebooks which cards each of the two different egos should have in their deck. In a standard game, the players would choose 3 colors of cards that they would like to use, and then simply put together a deck using that colored cards. Once we have collected our egos' roots and put together our deck, we need to shuffle our deck. Now we also need to sort out tokens to put out in the center of the table. As you can see, I do not have any tokens, but that's because this is a promo version. You would put your tokens in the center when you start to play. In the center here, you should have a health point tracker. You can use a 10-sided die, or if you have the playmat, well, you can use the playmat. Each character starts the game with 9 health points. So now we have the play area set up, but we still need cards on our hands, right? Otherwise, it's quite hard to play a card game. Now, the attacker, Nuri, gets to draw 4 cards up to her hand. But the defender, Saria, in this case, gets to draw 5 cards up on her hand. Each player can redraw once, but in that case they would need to get rid of all the cards that they have just got up on their hand, leave them to the side and then draw new cards. Once they have drawn the new cards, we need to reshuffle the cards that we drew before into the deck again. And hopefully it got a little bit better than what you got the first time. So now we have our cards on our hands and we are ready to start playing. But before we take a look at the gameplay, let's look at the cards first. Let's start by taking a look at the spell cards. We can see that this is a spell card by looking in the top left corner, because up here we have a charge token cost, and only spell cards have this cost. Next to it we can see the spell color or the symbol. We can see the name of this spell. Up here we have the artist who have created this fine art, and in the top right corner we have the spell type or the symbol of this spell. Over here in the left side we have the reminders, meaning the reminders of what will happen when you cast this spell. Down here we have a keyword, I will get back to that later. And here we have the spell actions, meaning what will happen when you cast this spell. Besides spells, we also have items. Now you can see that this is an item because it does not have a cost in the top left corner. It does have a name. It still have an artist that have created the art, plus it has a symbol showing the card type. Items can also have keywords here. Again, we will come back to these later. And at the bottom of the card, we can see this item's ability, meaning what will happen once you play the card. So these cards has card types in the top right corner. These acts as a reminder on how to use them, because when you use the spell, the card types often helps with synergies in this game, as some of the effects will rely on certain spell types to work. But what do they mean? Well, let's start with the one that we call Arcana. Each deck has 3 Arcana cards in it, 1 from each color that you have selected to play. And during your prepare step, you may discard this card to perform one of the 2 options listed on the card. Next, we have the burst type. And these cards are resolved immediately as they are cast. And then they are discarded. Now, as you can see, this card here has a different color and is a chromatic spell card. This means that this card counts as any color card and therefore may charge or be charged by any other color card. Next we have edicts. This is magic that lasts for one turn, usually with powerful effects. When we cast these cards, we place them in our active area. And once we come into the focus step, these are discarded. Then we have minions. Minions are powerful allies that will last for a limited amount of time. When you cast them, you place them in your minion slot in your active area. You can only have one minion active at a time. Next we have potions. Each deck has 3 potion cards in it, one from each color that your rival has selected to play. Now you may discard them from your hand at 2 different times. During the prepare step to place a charge token on any other spell card in your spell book, and as a response to your rival casting a spell, meaning that you block it out. Then we have ward. These are enchantments that remain until triggered by other spells or effect. When you cast them, you place them in your active area. Beside the spell cards, we also have the ego and root card. Remember? Now the ego is the character that we portray as. And on this card, there will be an action that you can use, but also stated when you can use it. And then we have the root card. This here is the first spell that your mage have learned, and they are always burst types. Once you have cast these spells, you do not discard it. You keep them in your root slot. So now that we have learned the cards, let's take a look at our play area. Here we have our ego, our root, and our deck. Above that, we would have our spell book. Now, spells must be added to your spell book from your hand before you can cast them. Spells in your spell book can be charged by discarding matching colored cards or by discarding Arcana. Remember? So this spell here, for example, if you put it in your spell book, it is not active and you cannot use its actions yet. You may have a maximum of 4 spells in your spell book, and we do not count in your root into these 4 cards. If your spell book becomes full, well then you may discard a spell you wish to add a new one. And above your spell book is where you have any active spells. This means that they are active and can perform ongoing focus and trigger actions that are stated on the cards. There is no limit to how many spells you can have in the active area, except minions, remember, because those you can only have one of. So now we know the meaning of the cards, we have set up everything, and we're ready to start playing. This game is played out during turns, and each consists of 4 different steps. The first one is the focus step. Now, you wouldn't do the focus step if this is the first turn of the game, but beyond that, you always need to do this at the start of your turn. During the focus step, you need to look up on your active cards to see if they have any focus effect. If they do, you need to perform that focus action now. On the minions here, there's also supposed to be sand glass tokens. Now, I don't have this here, but they look like that. You also need to remove 1 sand token from your minion during this step. On the cards that are not active, meaning the ones that you have in your spell book, you need to add 1 charge token to each non-root card in your spell book. Again, I do not have those tokens here, but they look like that. And that was the focus step of your turn. Not too hard, right? Now, step number 2 is the prepare phase. And this is where we get to prepare our spell book. And you can do this how many times you want to. You can place a spell from your hand into your spell book. If your spell book should be full, well then you would need to discard a card to be able to put in another one. You can also choose to discard a card from your hand to add a charge token to a spell of a matching color in your spell book, meaning that the card that you discard must match the card on the table that you want to put a charge token on. Remember that the chromatic cards, meaning the gray one, counts as any colors. In step number 3, this is where this game gets exciting, because now we get to throw some spells. If we have fully charged any of the cards in our spell book, well, now it's time for us to cast them. A spell becomes fully charged when they have the same amount of charge tokens on them as the cost in the top left corner. When you have that, you either need to cast the spell or recall the spell. When you recall a spell instead of casting it, you remove all the charge tokens from it and then you place it back in your spell book. But if you choose to cast a spell, well, you would also need to remove all the tokens from the cards, but now you would place it up in your active area, unless it is a card that has the burst symbol, because then it is activated and discarded immediately. Cards that has the little lightning symbol here means that they are resolved immediately as well, while other spells might last longer, being in the active area for a longer time. Now that was step number 3, where we actually get to cast some spells and hopefully do some damage on our opponents. Now we come into step number 4. This is the refresh step. During the refresh steps, we first need to discard our hand. Now you may choose up to 2 cards to keep if you would like to. Once you have discarded those cards, you need to draw up until you reach a hand size of 5. If we would need to draw cards to our hand, but our deck would be completely empty, we would need to sacrifice 1 health to shuffle our discard pile and make a new draw deck to be able to keep on drawing cards up to our full hand size. When you have managed to completely drain your opponent on their life, well, then you win the game. Or if they manage to completely drain you on life, well, then you lose the game, of course. But that is how the game is played. Usually, one game of Chroma Arcana lasts for 20 to 40 minutes, meaning that you will have about 5 to 10 turns to finish your opponent per game. And that, my friend, is how you play Chroma Arcana. This game is fast, it's easy to learn. You can put it up on the table in no time and start playing. It works for new gamers, but it also works for more experienced gamers. This game will soon be available on Kickstarter, so be sure to check out the links down in the description. But also give me a little comment on what you thought about the video, what you think about the game. Are you gonna check this one out? Well, tell me, I wanna know. But most importantly, my friends, as usual, please remember to keep on spreading that board gaming love I know you all have. Peace out.